Republican candidate Donald Trump is desperately trying to hit the reset button on his presidential campaign. He's coming off of a week of turmoil, including a very damaging spat with the grieving family of a U.S. Muslim soldier killed in Iraq, and feuds with some top leaders in his own party that have left him several points down in the polls against Hillary Clinton. And in a stunning new development, more than 50 top Republican foreign policy and national security experts have signed a letter denouncing Trump and refusing to vote for him. Among those who signed the letter are a former head of the CIA and several people who served under Republican presidents from Richard Nixon to George W. Bush. Well, Donald Trump dismissed the attack, saying those who signed are part of a, quote, failed Washington elite just trying to hold on to power. So, can Donald Trump reboot his campaign, or is it already too late? That's the question of tonight's debate. We'll be talking about that in just a moment. But first, let's take a look. Oh, no, we're all right. Let's go ahead and talk more about the issue now. On the one hand, we've got Dov Zakheim. You are a former Undersecretary of Defense and one of the people who signed that open letter to the New York Times. You're coming to us now from Aspen, Colorado. Also with us is attorney and Trump supporter James Lacey. James, you were a California delegate for Donald Trump at the convention last month, and you're joining us now from Los Angeles. Hello to both of you, and thank you for joining us.
Hello. Hello.
Right.
Thank you for having me.
Dov, let's just start with you. Now, the language in this letter you and dozens of other top Republicans signed is incredibly strong. There's words like reckless, worse, dangerous. What is it about a Trump presidency that worries all of you the most?
I think it's even more about personality than it is about particular substantive issues. The man has demonstrated over and over again that he overreacts, that he exaggerates, that he's far too thin-skinned, and that, quite frankly, he is scaring the world. And I can tell you that because I have been on several continents over the last few months, and I keep hearing the same thing. His behavior is simply reprehensible. And as a matter of simply voting for someone or supporting someone with that sort of character, given that he is going to, or would like to be, Commander-in-Chief of the United States, the strongest country with the strongest military in the world, frankly scares a lot of us.
James Lacey, let me turn to you now. Now, you were part of the campaign for President Reagan before joining his administration in 1980. You must know some of the people who signed this letter. Can you understand what Dov's saying, how the people who signed it do have legitimate concerns about Donald Trump?
Yeah, I was a senior executive at the International Trade Administration during the Reagan administration. Is actually a next-door neighbor to one of the signers, so I'm sure Dov knows John Negroponte for a few months in the early Reagan administration. Look, I don't think Donald Trump's scary. I think what's scary are the policies that Dov and these 50 Republicans who've been part of the establishment have brought to America. They're the same policies as Barack Obama. They're the policies that allowed for 14 people to be killed in San Bernardino because of a visa waiver program that allowed the shooter's co-conspirator wife to come into the United States to actually immigrate when she had jihadist leanings that were on Facebook, and political correctness created by Dov and those 50 people that signed this letter allowed to get away. You know, the shooter in Orlando, it was terrible in Orlando. There were 50 people killed. There were 53 people injured, was on a watch list. He was on a terrorist watch list. But because of the policies of the Obama administration and these 50 Republicans, he wasn't able to be surveilled properly. The Tsarnaev brothers in Boston, for example, that was a terrible tragedy. 3 dead, 264 people maimed and hurt. Russian intelligence advised the United States that the Tsarnaev brothers were terrorists and that they might engage in these types of activities. And what happened? Nothing. They were allowed to go out and kill and maim. These policies of these 50 Republicans and the Obama administration is what we should be scared about, not Donald Trump, because Donald Trump wants to address it. He comes off on policy very strong in terms of the polls in national security, and I think that we've got to change things. And that's not to mention the killings in Nice, the killings in Charlie Hebdo, and the problems that we've had in France that have all happened because of the failures of Dov and his associates in not getting this national security stuff right.
James, let me just jump in here. Dov, what's your response to that?
Very simple. every single item that James just mentioned took place under the Obama administration. And maybe he doesn't read some of the columns that I write and that my colleagues write. We have been bitterly critical of Mr. Obama. We're no fans of his. We're no fans of Hillary's. But the paucity of examples that were just given with respect to the Bush administration, where we didn't have any of this, shows you how the Trump team simply does not even understand what's Obama and what's Republican. And I would further add that the type of criticism Mr. Trump himself made, talking about Syria, talking about ISIS, he didn't even talk about Ukraine because he never talks about Russia, once again shows you his total lack of knowledge. And if you have to rely on polls to give your bona fides regarding national security, that's really telling.
Well, no, it's about democracy. Your policies did involve approving a visa waiver program. You can't put that off on Obama. The reason that the San Bernardino shooter's wife was able to get into the United States is because of your policies that you could have changed.
Excuse me.
And that you've done a poor job.
No, we weren't.
And as far, let me speak
we weren't
now.
in power.
Your time to speak. Let me speak,
sure.
And then you can
Please.
respond. Let's be democratic
Absolutely.
about it. All right. The American voters,
right ahead.
even today, according to Real Clear Politics, even with a bad week for Donald Trump, the Real Clear Politics average has Clinton up just 7%. There are a ton of angry voters out there in the United States that want change, and they want change from your policies.
James, if I can just jump in here, the latest poll, just to be clear, the latest polls actually now have Clinton up about 12%, not 7%.
No, I'm looking at the Real Clear Politics average. Your readers can go right now to that URL. It's www.realclearpolitics.com, and the Real Clear Politics average poll shows Clinton up 7.5%.
Well, let's go.
And according to the most recent polls, if you go ahead and look in there, Trump is closing that gap and he's improving. There's a reason why 80,000 Democrat voters in Pennsylvania changed their registration to Republican, and it's because that what they hear from Donald Trump is resonating. The polls show that anywhere from 68% to 82% of American voters are angry. Now, if these Republican policy, national security people, these 50 people had put in such great policies, why is America so angry today? They're angry because the world is in chaos. Our police are being shot up domestically. We've had this terrible situation that we had in Dallas, and there's killings all over the world. I don't take any credibility from this group of self-serving 50 Republican consultants. What they really care about is they're going to lose their power under Donald Trump. If Donald Trump becomes president, he's not going to owe George W. Bush.
James,
he's not going to owe George H.W. Bush anything. And these people are not going to be able to do their consulting for the big, fat defense corporations and the military-industrial complex, which is what they're all about.
James, let's let Dov respond. Dov.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a chance to respond. To begin with, I don't see that. Go
Dov,
right.
please.
Would you like to interrupt?
Dov, please go right ahead. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. The whole point that we are making, and that I just made, is you cannot blame 50 people, some of whom left the Bush administration over a decade ago, like I did, for what's been happening today. Take the visa waiver program you talk about. The Obama administration had 8 years to change that. They didn't. So don't look at us. The world was very different when we left and when the Bush administration left the White House. There was no ISIS. In fact, General Petraeus had turned Iraq entirely around. Don't talk to us national security types about shootings against the police. If Mr. Trump thinks he can use hyperbole to deal with that, fine. I'm sure there are others who will answer him. I am dealing with the security of this country. I have dealt with it. I've had my life risked in a way that, quite frankly, many others have not. I've been threatened. And I can tell you that the 50 people who signed this letter, many of whom do not even want to go into any administration, nor do we need to make the money this way. We are deeply concerned because we go around the world, we hear what people say, we hear how people are absolutely stunned that Mr. Trump can say what he's saying, that he's ready to undermine alliances, that he's ready to tolerate Japan and Korea, South Korea going nuclear, that he looks away at whatever Mr. Putin does and didn't even know that Russia invaded Ukraine. That's what scares people. That's what scares us. And I think that's what scares the American people, which is why on national security, Hillary Clinton, with whom I don't agree, is still ahead of Mr. Trump.
James.
Yeah, what I disagree about all of this is the blue smoke and mirrors that you're using. You allow yourselves to be called Republican officials warning Trump, but you're really not Republican officials. You're really just national security people who have worked in Republican administrations and in many cases worked in Democrat administrations. So what you set up and what you allow the media to set up is this falsehood that these are somehow people who should be in the Trump camp or were in the Trump camp. I can tell you that I know that many of the signers of this letter didn't even support Ronald Reagan when he ran for president. You're not political operatives. What you are bureaucrats, and you are individuals who certainly have served your country. And I heard what you just said. I'm an ardent Trump supporter, and I will take a step back and say I certainly appreciate your service to your country. I gave 10 years of my life to working in the Reagan administration and 2 years in the Bush administration as well. And I think that that's very important. But the bottom line is that there's blue smoke and mirrors going around. There's deflection. This is simply a group of people who are going to be out of power when Donald Trump is elected president. And there is a significant path for Donald Trump to be elected president. And what you're doing is you're taking limelight and you're giving yourself the opportunity to have a light shined on you at the expense of Donald Trump to promote your careers. This is basically it. And this group includes people who would very much like to be consultants to major corporations, to defense contractors in a Republican administration so that they could make use of their contacts in the traditional, almost corrupt way that Washington, D.C. works. When Donald Trump gets elected president, he's going to be the freest president in the history of the United States because he isn't going to owe the politicians or the party insiders anything. He's going to be able to do what's right for America.
James,
And
I'm just going to have to jump in here. I'm sorry. Time is very, very short. I just need to wrap up very quickly with you, Dov. Zach, I'm just a quick word in rebuttal.
Respond?
Yes, please. Go right ahead. Just 1 minute, please. Yes, please go right ahead.
Absolutely. Most of us have our government service behind us. Most of us are actually in retirement or in semi-retirement. I don't like ad hominem attacks on individuals. I know many, many people who did nothing except serve as Republicans. I have never been a civil servant. I've always been a political appointee. I've always been a Republican. I'm proud of it. And my biggest concern is that Mr. Trump not only is bad for America, but as a Republican, he's bad for the Republican Party. And to assault people like Senator Susan Collins and members of the House of Representatives who've criticized him, who are solid Republicans, frankly, I think is outrageous. And you owe them an apology, sir.
All right, Dov Zakheim, thank you so much. We're going to have to leave it there. James Lacey, thank you to you, both of you, for being on the debate tonight. Thanks to you for watching France 24. Do stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few minutes with more.